Hello, everyone. This is Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host, and this is a very special Live Life Well TV New Year's special. Stay tuned. Let's start out with some background to this time of year, New Year's. There's some things that the history.com website has to say about this whole tradition and New Year's holiday that you might not have known about before. So I'll start with that, and then we'll get into the meaning of what New Year's really is all about. So, courtesy of history.com, let's start out with some background. Civilizations around the world have been celebrating the start of each new year for at least, get this, 4 millennia. Today, most New Year's festivities, of course, begin on December 31st, which is New Year's Eve, the last day of the Gregorian calendar, and continue into the early hours of January 1st, New Year's Day. Common traditions, of course, include attending New Year's Eve parties, maybe a huge one if you happen to be in New York City on Times Square, eating special New Year's Eve foods, making resolutions, we'll talk about that, for the new year, and of course, what would New Year's be without noisy, beautiful fireworks? When you were growing up, what was special about New Year's at your house with your family? What did you do every year? What were some of your traditions? What were some of the things that brought joy to your heart every New Year's Eve and New Year's Day? For me, my parents didn't make much of the holiday season, and that's not a bad thing. They were so career driven, and a lot of the things in the performing arts for them occurred during the holidays. So they were out spreading joy through the performing arts during this time of year, which was great. It taught me a lot because that's kind of what I'm doing now with you. So we really didn't have too many traditions. I do remember watching the ball drop in Times Square on our black and white TV when I was growing up in our house every year, which was a lot of fun. And I still have a memory of my parents when it was midnight. They had 2 champagne flutes full of champagne, and they would toast to one another and to us, and drink a bit of that champagne and then give each other kind of a wet kiss on the lips. And I think it was always wonderful for my brother to see that, because my parents really taught my brother and I a lot about love, a lot about partnership, and a lot about knowing that the upcoming year, no matter what, was going to be a good one. So that's what was special and still is special about New Year's Eve and New Year's Day for me. What about you? So let's continue with some more information for the moment from history.com, and let's talk about New Year's celebrations. The earliest recorded festivities in honor of a New Year's arrival date back, get this, I cannot believe this, to about 4,000 years back to ancient Babylon. For the Babylonians, the first new moon following the vernal equinox, the day in late March with an equal amount of sunlight and darkness, heralded the start of a new year back then. They marked the occasion with a massive religious festival called Akitu, A-K-I-T-U. And that involved a different ritual on each of its 11 days. In addition to the new year, Atiku celebrated the mythical victory of the Babylonian sky god Marduk over the evil sea goddess Tiamat and served an important political purpose. It was during this time that a new king was crowned, or that the current ruler's divine mandate was symbolically renewed. Wow. History is so amazing. You know, we're so locked into this period of time because that's where we are with our lives. We often forget how many billions of lives in different places and different cultures, particularly during this time of year, did something different, did something just as special that really resonated with them. Did you know, in order to realign the Roman calendar with the sun, Julius Caesar had to add, I've heard about this before, 90 extra days to the year 46 BC when he introduced his new Julian calendar. Throughout antiquity, celebrations around the world developed increasingly sophisticated calendars, typically pinning the first day of the year to an agricultural or astronomical event. In Egypt, for instance, the year began with the annual what? Flooding of the Nile, which coincided with the rising of the star Sirius. I love that. The first day of the Chinese New Year, meanwhile, occurred with the second new moon after the winter solstice. Let's talk about how January 1st became New Year's Day. The early Roman calendar consisted of 10 months and 304 days, with each new year beginning at the vernal equinox. According to tradition, it was created by Romulus, who was the founder of Rome in the 8th century BC. A later king, Numa, is credited with adding the months of Januarius and Februarius. Over the centuries, the calendar fell out of sync with the sun, and in 46 BC, the emperor decided to solve the problem by consulting with the most prominent astronomers and mathematicians of his time. He introduced something called the Julian calendar, which closely resembles the more modern Gregorian calendar that most countries around the world use to this very day. As part of his reform, Caesar instituted January 1st as the first day of the year, partly to honor the month's namesake, Janus, the Roman god of beginnings, with two faces who allowed him to look back into the past and forward into the future. Romans celebrated by offering sacrifices to Janus, exchanging gifts with one another, decorating their homes and laurel branches, and attending raucous parties. Wow, that's really something. In medieval Europe, Christian leaders temporarily replaced January 1st as the first of the year with days carrying more religious significance, such as December 25th, the anniversary of Jesus' birth, and March 25th, the Feast of the Annunciation. Wow. This is, without saying, a holiday period that is rich in past history and tradition. And speaking of traditions, again, thanks to history.com, let's talk about New Year's traditions. In many countries, New Year's celebrations begin on the evening, of course, of December 31st, New Year's Eve, and continue into the early hours of January 1st. Revelers often enjoy meals and snacks throughout to bestow good luck for the coming year. For example, in Spain and several other Spanish-speaking countries, people bolt down a dozen grapes. They ingest a dozen grapes, symbolizing their hope for what? A dozen, 12 great months ahead. That's a nice tradition. In many parts of the world, traditional New Year's Eve dishes feature legumes, which are thought to resemble coins and herald future financial success. Examples include lentils in Italy and black-eyed peas, of course, in the southern United States. Because pigs represent progress and prosperity in some cultures, pork appears on the New Year's Eve table in Cuba, Austria, Hungary, Portugal, and other countries as well. Ring-shaped cakes and pastries, now I'm starting to get hungry, a sign that the year has come full circle, round out the feast in places like the Netherlands, Greece, and elsewhere. In Sweden and Norway, meanwhile, rice pudding, yum, with an almond hidden inside is served on New Year's Eve. It is said that whoever finds that nut can expect 12 months of good fortune. Other customs that are common worldwide include watching fireworks, wonderful, wonderful thing to do, and singing songs to welcome the new year, including what song? And I'm not going to sing it for you because you would turn this off right away. But of course, the song is Auld Lang Syne in many English-speaking countries. The practice of making resolutions for the new year is thought to have first caught on among the ancient Babylonians, who made promises in order to earn the favor of the gods and start the new year off on the right foot. Of course, New Year's in the United States, and actually in many places around the world, is signified by the dropping of the giant ball in New York City's Times Square, one Times Square actually, at the stroke of midnight. Millions, and I mean millions of people around the world watch this event. I'm sure you have from time to time, or might do that this year as well. The ball itself, by the way, has ballooned from a 700-pound iron and wood orb to a brightly patterned sphere 12 feet in diameter, weighing in at, get this, an astounding 12,000 pounds. Various towns and cities across America have developed their own versions of the Times Square ritual, organizing public drops of items ranging from pickles to possums, that's horrible, at midnight on New Year's Eve. So, how are you going to spend this New Year's Eve? Or how did you spend this New Year's Eve? Here's what New Year's Eve means to me. Maybe it does the same thing with you, and I want to talk about this in terms of resolutions, because at least in America, to me, this is just my opinion, there's so much pressure to make resolutions. It's become a cultural tradition to do that, and people still to this day ask me, did you make resolutions? Are you going to make resolutions? And when I tell them, not really, they think that there's something wrong with me. Why wouldn't I do that on New Year's? Here's the reason. It is said, various studies have concluded, that people that make New Year's resolutions, by February, 80% of those very people who made New Year's resolutions have not chosen to observe them or follow them. So I don't want to do that to myself. Here's what I do in the form of prayer, in the form of meditation, in the form of my faith. I do that every day. Before I get out of bed, I make a resolution in the form of prayer, and it starts off with thanks before I get out of bed and start my day. And you can do this on New Year's Eve too. I thank who I need to thank for the gift of another day, for the gift of another month, for the gift of another year. And I realize how fortunate I am to be here, to live my life to the best of my ability, knowing that I am never alone. And I resolve that no matter what happens that day, that week, that month, that year, that I will indeed make it through and manage the ups and downs to the absolute best of my ability. Because if I don't do that, or choose to do that, who will? So, what is your wish? What is your prayer? What is your New Year's Eve resolution? Not that you have to make it on December 31st at the stroke of midnight, but resolve, no matter when you do this, that everything is going to be okay, and the year that is upon us will be the best one that you can make it. Not others make it for you, but you can make it. And that, to me, is what New Year's is all about. Yes, it's a celebration. It is a celebration that you and I have made it through a very tough year. And you know what? We're going to make it through the next year as well. Amen. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. From my heart to yours, I wish you a very, very happy, healthy, joyous, loving, and peaceful New Year each and every day. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. This has been Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host, with a Live Life Well New Year's special. God bless.